Chapter 62, Same Beginning, Different Ending. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Kin Uchiha. Hearing Uchiha Jin's question, a gentle and warm figure appeared in Uchiha Fenghua's mind. He also has curly hair, narrow phoenix eyes, and always a smiling expression, but his impression is completely different from the Uchiha Jin in front of him. No. Uchiha Fenghua did not hide it, because there was no need. People who were familiar with Uchiha Gold naturally knew the identity of Uchiha Silver. What kind of person is he? Uchiha Jin, who knew basically nothing about his father, couldn't help but ask. This is not the place to talk. Come to a place with me and let's talk slowly. Sighing, Uchiha Fenghua suppressed the inexplicable disgust in his heart and invited Uchiha Jin to find a place to talk. Naturally, Uchiha Jin had no objection. He followed Uchiha Fenghua to a tavern. After pushing the door open, he led Uchiha Jin into a small booth with familiarity. He ordered a bottle of wine and closed the booth. The two just sat cross-legged, observing each other. When the wine was on the table, Uchiha Fenghua poured a glass for both of them, and then drank alone. You are really similar to your father, especially your appearance. They are exactly the same. After a glass of wine, Uchiha Fenghua, whose face turned slightly warmer, stared at Uchiha Jin's face and said slowly. You know my father. Judging from Uchiha Fenghua's tone, he must have a close relationship with his father. More than just acquaintance, your father was once my captain and half my teacher. After drinking a glass of wine, Uchiha Fenghua took a long breath and said with a nostalgic look on his face. Brother Jin was one of the most powerful geniuses at that time. He opened his eyes at the age of 8. He was proficient in using 3 Magatama at the age of 12. He was good at the 5 escape techniques and the sealing technique to complete various difficult tasks by himself. He repeatedly performed extraordinary feats in wars. Uchiha Fenghua kept listing various feats of Uchiha Jin. He was very excited when talking about it, but as he spoke, his face suddenly darkened. Pity. What's a pity? Uchiha Jin, who was listening with interest, quickly asked. It's a pity that he died young, otherwise it would be hard to say who would win the position of clan leader. Uchiha Fenghua shook his head melancholy and said with regret, his father almost became the clan leader. I heard Uchiha Yao brag about it in the dungeon, and I thought he was bragging, but I didn't expect it to be true. Can you tell me the details of this? Uchiha Jin, who was eager to find the truth, couldn't help but asked curiously. Regarding the details of Uchiha Jin's sacrifice, Uchiha Yao gave him an explanation. If Uchiha Fenghua and Uchiha Jin knew each other, would it be consistent with what Uchiha Yao said? Outside the cubicle, the sound of Uchiha clan members drinking could be heard endlessly. It was a lively scene. Fingers rubbed the wine glasses, and Uchiha Fenghua's calm face revealed a rare nostalgia. My parents and I, as well as the Taijima clan leader, were teammates in a small team. Your father served as our captain. Uchiha Fenghua shook the empty cup in his hand and signaled Uchiha Jin to pour the wine. After filling a glass of sake, he drank it without stopping, which seemed to relieve his sorrow with wine. At that time, there was no problem in the preparations for the last mission of our team. In order to take care of me, who was weaker, your father arranged for me to be on the secret sentry position. The mission originally went very smoothly, but at the last moment, something happened. Accident. Uchiha Fenghua's voice was low and sad. When he said the word accident, the hand holding the wine glass was so tight that the veins popped out. The whole person looked extremely emotionally unstable, and his eyes were filled with tears. His usual composure was gone. There is a traitor. Someone secretly leaked our mission route and ambushed our enemies several times on the only way. 3 teams were on the mission with us, but they were all destroyed. Your father tried his best to lead the team members to break out. Come out. Were you there? Uchiha Jin couldn't help but ask after hearing the same story told by Uchiha Yao. Of course I was there and witnessed the sacrifice of your parents. I'm sorry, but there's really nothing I can do. Uchiha Fenghua said with a hint of choke in his voice at the end, and continued with tears in his red tiger eyes. I'm a coward. The captain ordered me to leave, but I just left like that. I'm sorry for taking care of him for so long. Elaborate. Uchiha Jin, who noticed that the details were somewhat different, asked aloud. What happened in the end? Your parents led the unconscious Taijima clan leader to break out of the encirclement in a bloody battle, but the enemy could not get rid of them. I also joined the battle as a backup sentry, but it could not have any effect. Being weak, I could only become a burden. Uchiha Funghua closed his eyes in pain, and the words he spoke seemed to drain all his energy. At the last moment, your father ordered me to evacuate with the injured and unconscious Taijima clan leader, and they and his wife cut off the queen for us. Clan leader Taijima has been unconscious. Thinking of the plot told by Uchiha Yao, this is obviously very different from what Uchiha Funghua said. Yes, Chief Taijima was seriously injured at the time. He came back to receive treatment for a few days before he woke up. Any last words from my parents? Wanting to know if his parents had said anything important before they died, Uchiha Jin asked aloud. No, the situation was very urgent at that time, and no one had time to give any instructions. Uchiha Funghua shook his head and said with regret. Thank you Captain Sealing for telling me so much about my parents today. Uchiha Jin straightened up and saluted Uchiha Funghua. I deserve it. I watched your parents sacrifice themselves but could do nothing. I should apologize to you. After saying that, Uchiha Funghua knelt down and sat up, ready to kowtow to Uchiha Jin. Captain Sealing Fire, there is no need for this. Since my parents have chosen this path, they are already prepared to sacrifice their lives at any time. Uchiha Jin quickly stretched out his hand to support him, and then said with relief, after asking almost the same question, Uchiha Jin stood up and left, while Uchiha Funghua was still drinking one cup after another. Before leaving, the thoughtful Uchiha Jin faintly heard the somewhat drunken Uchiha Funghua murmuring behind him. Why didn't you dodge that sword, brother Jin? That because he learned a lot of truth about his parents' sacrifice after encountering Uchiha Funghua by chance. Uchiha Jin, who was a little confused, had no intention of finding a carpenter to decorate his backyard. Uchiha Jin walked to his hut with a mask slung across his body and an Isafu doll in his arms. The store has already arranged the tables, chairs, and training targets, and the originally bare backyard has become a little more classy. Touching the factory new training dummy, Uchiha Jin nodded with satisfaction. Now he just had to rebuild a fence. It would be much more convenient if he could use wood escape, but it was a pity. Uchiha Jin, who had tidied up the backyard and was about to enter the house, suddenly stopped in his steps, raised a strange smile at the corner of his mouth, stretched out his hand to straighten the strange mask slung across his body, and gently opened the door. At this time, Senju Atama was sitting on the sofa in a daze, unaware of the figure coming in from the door. He quietly walked up behind Senju Atama, and the malicious Uchiha Jin put a hand on the other person's shoulder. The masked head leaned over. Senju Atama, who was sitting alone on the sofa in a daze, suddenly discovered that there was an extra hand on his shoulder. He turned his head in shock and saw a terrifying and strange face. Ah! Ghost O. The frightened Senju Atama let out a cry, then foamed at the mouth and fainted. TSK, 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 why is this brat so cowardly? Uchiha Jin, who found that the other party passed out before he had even performed much, took off his mask in disappointment and complained loudly. Hey hey hey, wake up. Squatting down and patting the unconscious Senju Atama, Uchiha Jin felt nervous when he found that there was no reaction from the other party. No, this is scary to death, so why don't I follow suit and play GG? Chapter 63, a system that makes whatever you want come true. You are listening at NaNovel. Trembling, he put his finger under the mouth and nose of Senju Atama, who was spitting white foam, and found that there was air coming in but no air coming out. Uchiha Jin's heart immediately sank. He quickly took off the shirt of this stinky kid, put his ear on his pink chest and listened carefully until he could hear the faint heartbeat. Uchiha Jin breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was just frightened and fainted. Uchiha Jin, who was relieved by the false alarm, put on Senju Atama's clothes, cleaned the dirt from his mouth and nose, and dragged him to the bed in the bedroom, leaving him to die. The vitality of the Senju clan should be very tenacious, right? Uchiha Jin thought a little guilty as he gently closed the door. Looking at the three-tailed doll in his hand, Uchiha Jin sighed. Fortunately, he bought a gift. He hoped that this stinky kid would not seek death when he woke up tomorrow. After hiding the gifts he bought, Uchiha-in was exhausted physically and mentally, so he took a bath first. After washing, he burned incense and worshipped the Uchiha family's Indra ancestor in the void. Everything is ready, only the prize is waiting. Entering the system space, looking at the heart steel ball calculated on the chessboard today, Uchiha-in rubbed his hands, stepped forward carefully with trepidation, and muttered. "Look at me, the European emperor is possessed, open it for me." Uchiha-in, who felt it coming, slapped the ball on the left without hesitation, and saw a dazzling golden light covering the heart steel ball. Seeing that it was golden light, Uchiha-in's heartbeat accelerated and his breathing became rapid. Is he really going to take off? Gold brick *5 universal currency, can be used for real consumption, WTF. The golden light slowly dissipated, and 5 heavy gold bricks were lined up on the ground. Uchiha-in almost couldn't catch his breath. With red eyes, he gritted his teeth and barely calmed down his irritable mood, turning to look at the other heart steel ball. Uchiha Jin thought. Isn't there another one? The previous one can be used as a cushion. This one will definitely produce good goods. Putting his hands together, Uchiha Jin bowed deeply to the only remaining ball, and the delivery was entrusted to him. Open. Uchiha Jin, who had prepared himself mentally, was neither sad nor happy. He stretched out his hand and pressed on the ball. A burst of blue light immediately enveloped the entire space. After a few breaths, the blue light turned into 2 balls of light, floating quietly in front of Uchiha Jin. He opened the first one casually. Hyuga Clan Constitution *1, after using it, you will obtain a trace amount of Hyuga Clan bloodline, and the attributes will be slightly improved. Hyuga Clan. Using the first reward, Uchiha Jin was stunned. How could he, who had never seen the Hyuga clan in such a long time, open the Hyuga clan's constitution, and wouldn't the Hyuga clan's bloodline require white eyes? My own pair of Sharingan is a real one. Even if they were cousins, they are still not related at all. Putting this strange reward aside for the time being, Uchiha Jin opened the second light ball. As the faint light faded, a few words slowly emerged. The sharp-eyed Uchiha Jin saw the 2 words would release written in front and almost jumped up in excitement. At this moment, his hands were shaking, and his mind had already begun to imagine the beautiful picture of himself clapping his hands to set the wooden man with Susanoo. As Uchiha Jin's breathing became increasingly rapid, the words behind it slowly emerged. Would release 4 pillars family. Can instantly create a complex wooden house, which is quite convenient to use. I can't help my family. What kind of things does this system give? Uchiha Jin rubbed his red eyes hard, changed several angles, and confirmed that the ninjutsu in front of him was not written wrong. It is indeed the wood-release ninjutsu used by Yamato, who will be called the future Hashirama. Its main function is to build a house. Uchiha Jin pinched the Harumi point between his eyes and found reasons to comfort himself. It's okay, it's wood-release after all. It just happens that we don't need to ask someone to repair the fence in the backyard, right? Uchiha Jin, who had forced himself to persuade, waved his hand in the air and integrated the 2 rewards into his body. In an instant, he felt a warm current flowing into his eyes. The vision of his eyes without opening the Sharingan was greatly improved. It seems that both Uchiha and Hyuga have the characteristics of strengthening vision in their blood. Would release 4 pillars family ninjutsu is also engraved in Uchiha Jin's mind. There is no restriction. It can be used without the blood of the Senju clan. Cursing and leaving the system space, Uchiha Jin, who had gained a lot, first came to the backyard and tried to launch a ninjutsu according to his memory. Would release 4 pillars. As the chakra was running, several wooden strips broke out of the ground in the open space in the backyard, and according to what Uchiha Jin thought in his mind, they were arranged in order. Several pieces of wood were orderly arranged horizontally and vertically around the backyard, and finally they were firmly combined together. and a row of exquisite fences was born. Looking at the fence that was no different from the design in his mind, Uchiha Jin nodded with satisfaction. Although it was not as delicate as the dog head carved on the wall of the 55 open earth flow, it was also beautiful and generous. Clapping his hands and humming a little song, Uchiha Jin returned home and first went to see Senju Atama, and found that the other party had returned to normal and was drooling and sleeping soundly. It's good to be a child, you can be carefree. Uchiha Jin, who lamented that growing up was not easy, turned his head and lay on the sofa and fell asleep. The next day, Uchiha Jin got up early and made breakfast. He ate one portion for himself and left another on the table. Then he packed up and went to work. Walking on the main road of the clan members who were going to work passed by one after another. Thinking of the series of events he encountered yesterday, Uchiha Jin's mind was a little confused. Originally, he just wanted to understand what happened in the tragedy of the clan 6 years ago, but he accidentally found his imprisoned grandfather and told him some big news. The original owner was a kaleidoscope but was dug out by his hypocritical uncle. His uncle killed his parents to seize the throne of the clan leader, and his eyes were about to be born. If he took them back, he would be able to take off and become the head of the clan above thousands of people. As a result, before these news were warmed up, he met Uchiha Funghua, the former younger brother of the original owner's father, and told him about the events he had personally experienced, which made the words of his grandfather imprisoned in a dungeon less credible. Can't there be less dark routines? Where's the light-hearted and funny story? Uchiha Jin rubbed his curly hair fiercely and couldn't help complaining. Cousin! What are you doing so early? The noisy Uchiha Izuna interrupted Uchiha Jin's thoughts and brought him back to reality. What else can I do? Go to work. I have become a pathetic adult. Izuna, cherish your happy time now. Sighing, Uchiha Jin touched the little hedgehog head of Uchiha Izuna, who looked silly in front of him. Are Uchiha who look like this silly when they were young? I don't understand. Anyway, I don't have to go to work when I grow up. My family is rich. Uchiha Izuna impatiently slapped the hand of the stinky adult in front of him and proudly puffed out his chest and said. Bang! Uchiha Jin's classic righteous violent chest. So I hate self-righteous brats. Shaking his sore hand, Uchiha Jin walked towards his post without paying attention to Uchiha Izuna, who was squatting on the ground and in a state of autism. Master Uchiha Jin, have you seen the old jailer? As soon as Uchiha Jin sat on the stool in the office and had no time to take out the teacup to make tea, Uchiha Lucha's head stuck in through the crack of the door and asked carefully. I saw him. Thank you very much for your help, Brother Lucha. For Uchiha Lucha, who was very efficient, Uchiha Jin did not hesitate to praise him. Brother Lucha is so talented, how can he stay in the position of guard for a long time? It is better to join my team so that you can show your skills and make great plans. Chapter 64, A Man's Dream Love Technique. You are listening at NaNovel.audio. Uchiha Jin, who really didn't want to work on his own, used all his life's knowledge to fool Uchiha Rosha, hoping that he would work for him. But I can't decide on this kind of thing. Uchiha Rashi, who was confused by Uchiha Jin, did not agree immediately. Although he was somewhat moved, the decision to change positions still had to be made by the leaders above. I will report this matter to Elder Yen, don't worry. Uchiha Jin naturally knew what he was in trouble for, and immediately moved out of Uchiha Luiying's immediate boss assured him. Then me. Uchiha Rashi was still hesitating, frantically weighing the feasibility of this matter in his mind. Why are you hesitating? I'll leave this to you. Involuntarily, he pushed the file into his hand. Uchiha Jin gave him a come on, I'll keep an eye on you expression, and directly rubbed the soles of his feet. You are busy first, I will go to the dungeon to investigate a prisoner. The free labor that was delivered to his door was not in vain. Uchiha Jin was relieved as he shook off his burden, and happily walked to the gate of dungeon number 2 with steps that he did not recognize his relatives. The ones on duty today are still Uchiha Rosha and Uchiha Teten, who failed to change the guard. Since Uchiha Rosha was dragged by Uchiha Jin to work as a free labor force, Uchiha Teten is now the only one left guarding the cell door. This guy Lu Cha said he was going to the toilet. Why didn't he come back for so long? Did he fall in? Thinking of Uchiha Rosha, who had not returned for a long time, Uchiha Taidan, who was bored alone for a long time, whispered BB. Brother Taidan, right? Let me go in and check. A strange voice sounded in his ears, and Uchiha Taidan, who was still in a daze, jumped up and quickly raised his head to look at the person. Uchiha, Jin. What caught his eye was his nightmare in recent days, a man named Uchiha Jin. Any questions? Seeing the startled tribesman in front of him, Uchiha Jin raised his eyebrows and asked strangely. No problem, please come in. As if he had just woken up from a dream, Uchiha Taidan quickly opened the door of the dungeon and respectfully invited him in. I'll look for this prisoner, and you can help me lead the way. When he was leaving just now, Uchiha Jin randomly picked up the file of the number 2 dungeon inmate without looking at it. Now he handed it over to Uchiha Taidan to help lead the way. This prisoner, okay, please come with me. Uchiha Taidan glanced at the prisoner's name, nodded and replied. Brother Lu Cha will be helping you in the archives for a period of time. I will report to Lord Luying to reassign you a teammate. Uchiha Silver, who was following behind Uchiha Iron Dan, said. When Uchiha Taidan heard this, his heart tightened, and he suddenly felt sad. Could it be that his good brother had suffered such a vicious attack, and it was all his fault that he had been implicated? The crazy Uchiha Iron Dan brought Uchiha Jin to the door of a cell, pointed inside and indicated that this was it. He, are you here to torture me again? Uchiha boy, feel free to use whatever tricks you have. If I, Yamanaka Soichiro, frown, I am not a good man. A middle-aged man with brown hair was locked in the cell. His hands were tied behind his back, and his indigo eyes stared at them fiercely, as if he wanted to eat his flesh. There's a fly on your forehead. Uchiha Jin stared at him and suddenly said something meaningless. Hearing these irrelevant words, Yamanaka Soichiro subconsciously shrugged his brows. Oh, you see he frowns, don't you? Uchiha Jin, who had achieved his goal, pointed at him and shouted. An awkward atmosphere instantly filled the entire space. Not only was the person involved, Soichiro Yamanaka, silent, but Teden Uchiha, who was standing next to him, also seemed to be silenced. His eyes were staring straight at his feet on the ground, as if counting how many fingers he had. Ahem, cough, Master Een, you need to interrogate yourself first. There is no one guarding the cell door now. I will go back first. Really unable to accept this embarrassing topic, Uchiha Taidan made an excuse to take the first step. It's really boring. People in the past didn't have any sense of humor. Shaking his head, Uchiha Jin said with hatred. You kid, are you trying to fool me? Yamanaka Soichiro, who had just reacted, asked through gritted teeth. Are you kidding? At such an old age, don't you even have the most basic tolerance? Uchiha Jin flipped through the information in his hand and said in a relaxed tone, Soichiro Yamanaka, specialized in spiritual secret arts, he was arrested at the same time as Yamanaka Ichino and others. I heard that your mountain clan's secret skills are quite powerful. Uchiha Jin walked meaningfully to the restrained Yamanaka Soichiro, looked at his hands tied behind his back, and said thoughtfully. But it wasn't countered by our Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Humph. If it weren't for the fact that there are many of you and you bully the few, how could we have fallen into your hands? How could we have the guts to fight with me one-on-one? Yamanaka Soichiro was furious and struggled to defend himself. All right. Uchiha Jin touched his chin, nodded and said seriously. Yamanaka Soichiro, whose hands suddenly regained their freedom, did not react and was stunned on the spot. No, you screamed so fiercely, but it turned out to be a soft-footed shrimp. Uchiha Jin, who found that the system had not moved yet, couldn't help but add fuel to the fire. It was detected that the host was encountering a battle, and the heart steel treasure box began to accumulate. The corner of his mouth curled up, as expected. The method of stimulating generals was still useful. Damn Uchiha boy, in order to thank you for letting me go, I will let you go peacefully. Realizing that the restraint on his body had disappeared, Soichiro Yamanaka stood up, raised his hands with a grin, and made a weird gesture. Seeing this posture, Uchiha Jin, who was familiar with the plot of Naruto, recognized the signature move of this Yamanaka clan at a glance. The secret techniques of the Yamanaka clan are all escape chakra ninjutsu aimed at the spirit. They are good at attacking at the spiritual level, reading memories, and controlling the enemy's consciousness. Ninjutsu, heart-turning technique. Yamanaka Soichiro raised his hand and used the Yamanaka clan's signature ninjutsu. The heart-turning jutsu is a ninjutsu in which the Yamanaka clan releases their own spirit and takes over the enemy's body for a short period of time to move freely, a man's dream love technique. As Yamanaka Soichiro's mental power struck from across the air, Uchiha Jin subconsciously started to use the Sharingan. I don't know if it was the ability of the Sharingan, but he could vaguely see a stream of escape chakra rushing straight to his forehead with mental power. Uchiha Jin, who was still thinking about whether he should pretend to slide and kneel to cheat the stack, turned sideways to avoid the opponent's charged attack. Oh, you think you can escape easily? Not surprised by Uchiha Jin's dodge action, Yamanaka Soichiro twisted his hands, and that mental power actually turned the corner. In shock, Uchiha Jin, who had no time to dodge, could only watch as Yamanaka Soichiro's mental power broke into his consciousness. It stands to reason that the Yamanaka clan's heart-turn jutsu can only attack in a straight line, but I didn't expect that Yamanaka Soichiro could change the attack route of the heart-turn jutsu after years of hard training. It was really terrifying. At this time, Uchiha Jin found that he could no longer control his body to make any movements. A sudden burst of spiritual power in his mind made him feel dizzy, as if he had been on a roller coaster for 3 days and 3 nights and felt like nauseating. You stupid Uchiha boy, you didn't expect that my secret technique can turn corners. A strange voice came from Uchiha Jin's mouth, and his tone of voice was completely different from before. Yamanaka Soichiro seemed to have lost consciousness, and his body fell limply to the side. Just let me make you unable to feel the end of the pain. Yamanaka Soichiro smiled ferociously and controlled Uchiha Jin's body, took out a kunai from his ninja bag and stabbed his neck tremblingly. Chapter 65, Lying Down and Eating. You are listening at NaNovel. At this moment, in Uchiha Jin's sea of consciousness, Yamanaka Soichiro locked his consciousness body into a small dark room. Uchiha Jin's entire consciousness was occupied by his spirit body. Yamanaka Soichiro, who was laughing wildly, looked at the sea of consciousness he occupied. Everything here was the same as the people he had invaded. Uchiha Jin's sea of consciousness was also a void. The indifferent Yamanaka Soichiro was about to control Uchiha Jin's body to commit suicide. Suddenly, he found that there was something flickering in Uchiha Jin's sea of consciousness. Driven by his curiosity, Yamanaka Soichiro, who had never seen such a situation, cleared the fog there. A strange door slowly appeared in front of him. The door was black and tightly locked by a big lock. Yamanaka Soichiro walked up and looked at the big lock. The lock was bronze in color, but there was no keyhole to unlock it. There was a windmill pattern on the surface of the lock, which faintly emitted a red glow and had a strange attraction. This was the first time that he encountered this situation. The old and curious Yamanaka Soichiro, adhering to the spirit of scientific research, temporarily delayed Uchiha Jin's suicide plan and began to study the door lock in front of him. When his palm touched the lock, it was not as cold as he imagined, but a hot feeling came. Touching the pattern on the lock, Yamanaka Soichiro was surprised to find that there were several tiny cracks on the lock surface. As a member of the Yamanaka clan who specializes in spiritual secret arts, he could clearly sense that someone had put a seal on this Uchiha's mind. What secrets does this seal hide? Yamanaka Soichiro couldn't help but use his mental power to spy on the cracked lock in his hand. The moment his mental power touched the lock, a pair of scarlet eyes appeared out of thin air in front of him, and a strong force came from the pattern of the big lock in his hand and threw him out. The backlash of mental power instantly fed back to his body. Yamanaka Soichiro, who had occupied the magpie's nest, was shocked by this blow and had to choose to escape from Uchiha Jin's sea of consciousness. In reality, the kunai controlled by Yamanaka Soichiro paused just before it was about to pierce his throat. After a brief struggle, the hand holding the kunai fell down powerlessly. Yamanaka Soichiro, who was unconscious, suddenly shuddered, his eyes wide open with shock. What on earth is in your head? Ah, Uchiha Jin, who suddenly regained consciousness, looked at Yamanaka Soichiro, who was holding his chest and panting, with a confused face. Uchiha Jin, who had just been hit by a heart-turning technique, felt his eyes go black, and found that his consciousness could not control his body, and his spirit body was locked in a dark corner by Yamanaka Soichiro, who turned into a god of war in the sea of consciousness. He was considering whether to use the Tsukimi experience card to give Yamanaka Soichiro's spirit body a big one. If his spirit body was directly facing the illusion of the kaleidoscope, the effect would not be doubled, but 10 times 10. Uchiha Jin's consciousness can observe the movements of his body. Just before Yamanaka Soichiro controlled his body and was about to stab his throat with a kunai, Uchiha Jin took out the Tsukimi experience card produced by the system. When he was about to use it, he saw Yamanaka Soichiro stop his movements and walk into the depths of nothingness in the sea of consciousness alone. In just a few breaths, Uchiha Jin, who was holding the Tsukimi experience card and watching the changes, saw that Yamanaka Soichiro, who was still very inflated just now, was thrown out, hit the ground heavily and then bounced out. No way, is it over? Are you old dang weak? How come you withered halfway through control? Uchiha Jin, who regained his freedom, still had a stable output, and he was an old yin-yang man as soon as he opened his mouth. Uchiha, don't be so arrogant, I haven't tried my best yet, and I will definitely crush you to ashes in my next move. Yamanaka Soichiro was injured by the backlash, but after all, he was an old master of secret techniques and could minimize the harm of backlash in a short time. As expected of an old senior of the Yamanaka clan, you are very spirited. I, Uchiha Jin, would like to call you the strongest in mind control ninjutsu. I, the junior, admit defeat. Uchiha Jin changed the subject and gave a thumbs up with admiration. I was originally thinking that the Uchiha kid in front of me would say something outrageous and vulgar, but I didn't expect the other party's attitude to change 180 degrees. The strong contrast made Yamanaka Soichiro unable to catch his breath. He was so angry that his eyes turned black and he fainted. Host failed, and gained 10 heart energy. After 3 more battles, you can unlock the Heart Steel Treasure Box reward. Current accumulated heart energy, 10. A beautiful system prompt sounded, and Uchiha Jin nodded with satisfaction, went over to tie up the unconscious Yamanaka Soichiro again, and closed the prison door while humming a happy little song. Today is a good day to eat, that he greeted Uchiha Taidan, who was on guard. Uchiha In, who had finished his daily work of heart steel today, stayed here without intention. He was going to skip work like yesterday, but he didn't expect to meet someone who surprised him halfway. Elder Miao, good morning. A familiar withered figure was seen from afar. Uchiha Miao, who looked indifferent, actually came to the dungeon, and he didn't know what he was doing. Since he met him, it would be wrong not to say hello, so Uchiha In took the initiative to step forward and said respectfully. Uchiha In. Uchiha Miao was also surprised to meet Uchiha In here. What are you doing here? That he briefly told Uchiha Miao the ins and outs of his transfer to the dungeon to organize files. After listening, Uchiha Miao thought for a while and said, "This job is really suitable for you. You don't have to go out to do missions, and you don't have to contact your clan members." He had heard a little about Uchiha Jin's notorious deeds. Even he had a little disgust for the seemingly harmless Uchiha in front of him, but he was too cunning to show it easily. Your eyes, don't feel any discomfort. Suddenly thinking of something, Uchiha Miao stared at the other person's eyes and asked. No, I have awakened the Sharingan, and my eyesight is great. Uchiha Jin boasted to him. Sharingan, if you have time, come to the institute and I will check it for you. After saying this, Uchiha Miao walked into the depths of the dungeon without looking back. Uchiha Jin was a little confused. He learned from Uchiha Yao that his current eyes were not original, and the person who operated on him was most likely Uchiha Miao just now. He should know the condition of his eyes very well. Why did he show curiosity about his eyes? Uchiha Jin, who was thinking about all sorts of things, left the dungeon. Not far away, Uchiha Miao, who watched him disappear at the dungeon gate, emerged from the darkness. I clearly told Yen to take a pair of ordinary people's eyes. Why did he open the Sharingan? Uchiha Miao, who was full of doubts, was ready to find Uchiha Yen, who provided the eyeballs at that time, to ask for clarification. I don't know if that kid Senju Banjian has woken up. I'll go back and give him a gift later, which should make him feel better. Senju Banjian's life is closely linked to him. As long as he is not sent back to the Senju clan, Uchiha Jin will not be at ease. He cooks for him because he is afraid that the kid will starve to death or commit suicide due to depression, so he prepares gifts for him. I am really a great Uchiha. Thinking of this, Uchiha Jin nodded with self-recognition. Cousin. Why are you strolling here instead of going to work? Chapter 66. New skin but still the same old routine. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. A familiar voice sounded. Uchiha Jin, who had just walked out of the dungeon, turned his head and looked at the two teenagers not far away. He thought of the words in a flash. Izuna, Madara, do you know what kind of conditions are required to be a qualified leader? Izuna, who originally wanted to tease Uchiha Jin, was confused by the other party's question. He was young and had never thought about such questions. The power to sweep everything. On the contrary, the precocious Uchiha Madara touched his chin and thought about it and answered tentatively. That's right, but this is only one of the most basic conditions. Uchiha Jin nodded and shook his head, with an expression that said you are too superficial, which made the two teenagers angry. Then you say it. Uchiha Izuna, who was angry, waved his little fist and said. Humph, let me popularize what conditions a qualified leader should have. Uchiha Jin looked around and found that there was no one else, so he waved his hand to signal the two brothers to come closer. The two brothers did not doubt him, and came over out of curiosity, ready to listen to what Uchiha Jin had to say. In addition to strength, the most important thing is. And, the two boys' eyes flashed with a gleam of curiosity. This, Uchiha Jin mysteriously stretched out a hand, palm facing up, thumb and index finger circled into a circle, making a universal gesture. The two boys had question marks on their faces. TSK, as a leader, you have to have gold coins in your hands, so that everyone will follow you wholeheartedly. Uchiha Jin said with a look of disappointment. Too superficial. Uchiha Izuna, who was more impatient, complained. Don't worry, this is just one of the reasons. There is another most important point, which most people cannot achieve. Shaking his finger, Uchiha Jin signaled the boy not to worry, and then posed a pose that he thought was very handsome, and said confidently. Handsome. Just like me, I can get my colleagues to help me with my work by relying on my extraordinary appearance. After explaining why he could leave work early, Uchiha Jin ignored the two dazed boys and turned around to leave them a cool back. I have never seen such a shameless person. Uchiha Izuna, who realized it late, was stunned for a long time before reacting, and his face flushed with anger. Uchiha Madara next to him looked thoughtful. Uchiha Jin hummed a little song and strolled to the door of his house. He opened the door and saw Senju Atama sitting on the sofa in a daze and a Guyu-like posture. His shirt was slightly lifted, one hand was idly scratching his exposed belly, his eyes were dull and he was yawning, looking like a typical salted fish. You little brat, you are so leisurely. Thinking of how he worked hard to get up early to go to work, while this little brat was lying at home, Uchiha Jin felt extremely unbalanced. Do you know who is making money to support the family? Ah. Why are you back so early again? Only then did Senju Atama, who had just discovered that Uchiha Jin had returned, roll over and stand away from him very vigilantly. Tell me, you only eat and sleep all day long, you can't do anything, and you eat nothing. Uchiha Jin was so angry that his fingers almost poked into Senju Atama's round little face. Aw! It hurts, let go. The little brat in front of him bit his finger unexpectedly, and the pain instantly spread throughout his body. Uchiha Jin tried his best, but the little brat held on tightly and refused to let go. Seeing that the hard way didn't work, he could only try other methods. I've prepared a gift for you, let go and I'll give it to you. Gift? Hearing the word gift, Senju Atama's eyes lit up and his bitten mouth relaxed slightly. Really, it's in the cabinet, go and see for yourself. Uchiha Jin, who found that there was a play, said hurriedly that if he didn't let go of his fingers, he would go into the stomach of this stinky brat. "If you lie to me, I will bite you to death," Senju Atama threatened angrily after letting go of his mouth, and then turned to look in the cabinet. "Damn stinky brat, my Uchiha clan has always been honest and simple, and we keep our words." Uchiha Jin looked at the reddish tooth marks on his fingers, which were covered with Senju Atama's crystal clear and sticky saliva, which made him feel sick. He raised his bitten hand in disgust, went into the bathroom and scrubbed it several times, until his hand turned white and peeled. "Wow, what a cute turtle," Senju Atama, who found the three-tailed Isabu doll, exclaimed in accordance with his age. "Humph, a kid is a kid." Looking at Senju Atama, who was spinning excitedly with the Isabu doll, Uchiha Jin curled his lips and said with a wandering look, "Senju Atama, who received the gift, never bothered him again," and Uchiha Jin gained a rare piece. In the evening, Uchiha Jin personally cooked a few dishes. Senju Atama, who never let go of the doll, showed off 3 bowls of it, and took the initiative to help clean up after the meal. The power of the three-tailed doll is so terrifying. When night fell, Senju Atama, who was tired of playing, fell asleep holding the Isabu doll. After the kid fell asleep, Uchiha Jin came to the backyard as usual. The new decoration made him feel very happy. He lay down on the wooden recliner he bought, waiting for his skills to be refreshed. "This is life," stretching his body comfortably, Uchiha Jin thought happily. "Lying down is the best way." Suddenly, Uchiha Jin felt the surrounding atmosphere condense, and the wait for a long time finally came. A light curtain covered with water ripples appeared out of thin air, and a figure slowly walked out of it. "Why did you change your skin?" Looking at the old friend who changed his skin in front of him, Uchiha Jin asked with some surprise. The person who came was still his old friend, Tsukimi Mentor, fighting 7 people alone, but unlike the previous times, he was wearing a regular Akatsuki organization uniform. This time he appeared a little embarrassed. The classic uniform was gone. He was wearing a close-fitting fishnet clothes, and his face was extremely pale. Looking at the weak appearance of Uchiha Itachi, Uchiha Jin did not take it lightly. His perception that was higher than that of ordinary people clearly told him that the Itachi who changed his skin in front of him was much stronger than the ones that were brushed out before. Without waiting for the opponent to make the first move, Uchiha Jin, who was familiar with the process, took the lead, opened 3 Magatama in his eyes, and his right eye condensed, and Amaterasu appeared as he wished. In an instant, the black flames in the sky enveloped Uchiha Itachi, who was still in a daze. It was so easy to hit. Uchiha Jin, who could control Amaterasu through his eyes, could clearly sense that he had hit the target. Just as the black flames burned more and more fiercely, a pair of orange hands slowly tore open Uchiha Jin's Amaterasu, and a transparent orange skeleton slowly appeared. "Susanoo." Uchiha Jin retreated a few steps vigilantly, looking at the ghost-like half-body giant in front of him, and slowly said its name. The stubborn black flames were gently pinched by Uchiha Itachi's Susanoo and dissipated between heaven and earth. Amaterasu, as his strongest trump card, was easily controlled. Uchiha Jin couldn't help but feel a little powerless in his heart. Now he really didn't have the ability to match the Gundam unless he also drove a Gundam. He stared at Uchiha Itachi and Susanoo, guarding against the other party controlling Susanoo to suddenly burst out and give him a joke. Uchiha Jin, with his nerves tense, was highly focused. The next moment, his eyes met with Uchiha Itachi's charming kaleidoscope. A familiar feeling came over him, and Uchiha Jin's eyes went dark, and he came to the happy old home. Uchiha Jin, who was cursing, was invited to enter the Tsukimi space.